Hello guys, welcome to the target shooting live stream. This evening we're going to be speaking to Jon Axe. Jon's one of the UK's top practical shooters, practical shotgun and 3-gun, that's his speciality. But before we get Jon on, let's take a little look at him in action. Just some captured video, Jon doing his stuff.
Your shooter's ready. Stand by. Hit. Hit! 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 This way first. Close. Hey! Normal one. Hey! Hey! Close one. Hey! Is that it?
Can you do that? Have you got what it takes to do all of that stuff? Well, Jon's been doing that for a very, very long time. And I'm just going to bring him on now. Hi, Jon. I'm just going to unmute you. You hear me all right?
Yes, very good, mate.
Very good. Okay. By the way, guys, Jon charges £1 million to start a coup. And that includes getting rid of all the terrorist organizations out there on the sites as well. You know, so send the money to me, by the way, not to Jon. Jon, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Just at a glance at that stuff, it's not easy. You know, it's not that easy. There's so many different types of disciplines in shooting. you know, that's just practical shooting is just one area. It's obviously your speciality.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning, John. How did this all start?
Originally, Dad got an air rifle. There, he took me clay pigeon shooting. Had a lot of years off from that when I found beer. And then eventually found my way to practical shooting and just found this amazing sport that continues to give.
Was that just like a natural extension? Had you tried the pistol and the rifle, and did it all just come together?
No, not really. I took a friend of mine clay pigeon shooting, and a couple of years later he said, I found this practical shooting. Do you want to give it a go? I said, yeah, okay. So started with a mini rifle, and then progressed into shotguns and underlevers like cowboy guns, and then from there into pistols. That was all in the UK. Did a kind of, it's an American shooting trip run by somebody, Dave Kiddle, who does American shooting trips, which was a great introduction to it. And then another friend, who I still see a lot of now, invited me to America to go and shoot the Rocky Mountain 3-gun world shoot. 5 days of 3-gun madness, natural terrain, 5 days, 3 stages, so 15 stages in total. It's literally the hardest thing I've ever done with a gun. So everything since has been almost trying to replicate that.
And was that so? The American trip, obviously, your stuff in the UK would have started with legal rifles and legal guns in that respect. Yeah. But when you extended it to the full bore or a full metal jacket rounds in America, it was just naturally. Did you just take it straight away? Was it very different?
I didn't find it any different at all. Yes, okay, they're slightly louder. They recoil slightly more, but the basic principles of the marksmanship are the same. So it was just kind of, okay, well, that 223 is not as loud as my shotgun, and that pistol kicks a little bit more than my airsoft, but it's still the same principles. I don't have any problem transitioning across to it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you actually, John, how long have you actually been shooting professionally?
I'm nowhere near a professional. I don't get paid for this stuff. I have to pay a lot for the stuff I do, but I've been mostly serious about it for about, funnily enough, only about 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah, not long. Came back from the Rocky Mountain World shoot. Like, okay, I found my addiction, so let's go and do that as often as possible. And that's when I kind of went, well, deep is all I can describe it as. Went full on with it. Up until that point, I was just kind of playing around and knocking about, really. And then over the next 5 years, just progressively got more and more into it.
And in terms of winning, John, and you are used to winning. Is it prize fund money, or is it weapons, or how do they, as trophies, or how do these things accumulate? I mean, what sort of things you patented for?
In the UK, they give you like first, second, third prize. You're going to get a trophy, maybe a couple of hundred rounds of ammo, 20 quid. You might get some matches. You get your match entry fee back, but it's definitely not kind of profitable, shall we say. In the US, it's a little bit different. You have big prize tables, and you can win big prize. I think I've seen a check for when 3-Gun Nation was massive. It was 50 grand check for the winner. But at the matches I go to, you probably get guns down to the top 10 position, sometimes more. I can't own most of the guns they give away, so, or at least I can't bring them home. I can leave them out in America and pick them up out of there. But
can't bring them back into the UK, obviously. Yeah, no, I was thinking in terms of that. Yeah. No, so look, obviously the sport is not, it's not money orientated. There's not huge prize pots in there for very competitive shooters like yourself. It's not as much as we have Olympic shooting. It's mostly with the smaller rifles to that extent, but it's never, and it probably never will be a money orientated sport. But perhaps maybe, do you think maybe it should be, or do you think it's in terms of practice? I mean, practical shooting's come a long way, especially here in the UK with our gun laws. But do you think we should take it a bit more seriously? Do you think, what sort of things can we do to make it a bit more aware and a bit more lively here in the UK?
I've been saying for a little while now that practical shooting in the UK should be would be great if it was run as a business. So the competitors get charged a suitable amount. We're significantly cheaper than America, Europe, anywhere else you care to mention. All our matches are significantly cheaper because it's run on a volunteer basis. If it was run as a business, there'd be more money invested back into the sport, because people will do things for money, and there's only a limited amount of people who do things for the good of the sport. So to progress it, I think people need to pay more money, and I think the match directors need to be rewarded for putting on matches. That in turn gives better prize tables, more involvement, and I think the sport grows rather than it effectively just being a series of club matches.
So perhaps maybe it needs independent clubs, practical shooting organisations to arrange maybe competitive events to that extent with prize funds and what have you. I mean, obviously we're very restricted here in the UK what we can do, but John, if just for some of the young guys or maybe some of us here who are not completely and totally familiar with three gun, could you just run us through basically what type of guns are involved and what we can use here in the UK, obviously compared to what we can use in the US?
Yep. So in the UK, we can use Section 1 shotguns, which any more than 3 shots is a Section 1 shotgun, and that's exactly the same as America. So we're not really at a disadvantage when it comes to shotgun. When we go out to the States, they're allowed shorter barrels, but realistically, that's not a massive concern. In the UK for pistols, we've got airsoft LBPs and black powder guns. Black powder, they're not all that practical, but firing the gun are the same. The airsoft can be used. There is a practical shooting action air discipline. So you can go out and compete in action air pistol matches. And then there's the LBP, which is the closest we can get. There's now the R as well, so long barrel revolvers, so you can shoot 38s, 45s, things like that. People do, and rifles. Well, we have to divvy up the experience, so we can shoot semi-autos, but we can only shoot them at short distances with tiny little bullets. And then we can shoot 4-bore, so we can shoot at distance using 4-bore rifles, 223, 308. The only difference between what we do in the UK and what we do in the US is in the US we would use those things all on the same stage, potentially, whereas in the UK that's unlikely, just because of restrictions and legalities, things like that. It's all pretty transferable.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously we are restricted. I mean, we're allowed Section 1 shotguns, which is a great thing at the moment. At the moment we are, and the semi-automatic 2.2, which you could probably get away with, but obviously the long barrel pistol is what it is. But I mean, if that's the best we have, then that's it. But I think
I was going to say the LBP. A lot of people look down on them, and that's fine. They're entitled to their opinions. The only thing that's different about them is the long barrel and the stupid coat hanger out the back. So when you're doing manipulations such as a reload, that coat hanger could be jabbing you in the chest. When you're pulling the gun, it could be in the way. and the barrel, the extended weight of the barrel can lead the gun to pendulum past the target. So it's not quite as snappy as a proper gun, as a proper gun, a short barrel. But once the gun's pressed out into a shooting position, so when your hands are the camera there, your hands are out like that, that coat hanger's nowhere near your chest. The barrel's the other end of the gun. So the sight picture's the same, and trigger pull's the same. It's got slightly less recoil. But if you're not following your fundamentals, you're not going to hit your target. And everything else is just a manipulation. So you can do those manipulations with airsoft. There's not really, there's a lot of reasons for why they're not very good, but there's no excuse to not use them as a training tool.
See, in the video there, we looked at just pre to coming on there, John, it actually, obviously, you can see very clearly a Saxon 1 shotgun there. But, you know, with the rifle you were using, I mean, to me, it looked like a 22 semi-automatic, but it wasn't actually. It was it was full bore, was it not?
Depends. I said there was.
Was that
so the beginning part of the video was America. The end part of the video was UK. So
right.
At the end of the video, that was 2.2 LR, and then at the beginning of the video was 2.23.
Which is still great fun, you know. I mean, compared to the laws that we have, I mean, let's hope they don't touch 2.2 semi-automatic or practical shooting could be gone out the window, especially shotgun. Yeah. But I mean, as I said before, I mean, I think practical shotgun and 3-gun seems to be the up and coming shooting sports of recent years. It seems to be the more interesting of the lot. I mean, some of the small bore rifle clubs are finding it really, really hard to get young people interested. They seem to be closing, you know, with that in terms of home and LSR shooting with 2.2. But you know, getting young people in, getting through our very, very tough licensing processes with licenses, getting into clubs, becoming involved with the NRA, Bisley. You know, there are a few full bore clubs out there. It seems very, very difficult to get in. I mean, there are organisations all that out there, John, for practical shooting. Could you give us some idea of what's available in the UK in terms of practical shooting? So
most of the practical shooting is done at the club level, and there are loads of clubs out there that do it. One of the biggest hurdles for getting into shooting, where you don't really see anybody middle-aged, like I say, as I come into getting old, when you're young, because your parents will pay for you, and then you can shoot when your kids grow up and leave because they've left and you've got disposable income. As long as you've got kids, you've got to try and balance the books. And so you don't find many kind of 20, 30-year-olds doing a lot of shooting because they can't afford it. So the biggest hurdle to getting into it is money, as opposed to licensing. Yes, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to go and join a club and do a 6-month probation, and you've got to find a club that does the disciplines you like. But there are loads of them, and I think it's one of the biggest growing sports because it's going to sound strange. It's fun. It is interesting to sit down and shoot tiny little holes in paper very accurately. But that's not. There's a certain type of person who enjoys that level of application of skill, whereas running around and overcoming the problems set by the course designer, anyone can do it. It's not complicated. It's not sniper shooting. It's accurate enough and fast enough. It doesn't. You literally could get anybody to do it. A lot of the targets are reactive. So one of the really big up and coming things at the moment is Still Challenge. Just 5 targets, no movement involved, but it's very reactive. I think you shoot 5 strings of 5 rounds. Best for the count, but it's very reactive. It's bing, 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 and you get that instant feedback that you're a success, rather than going to one of the ranges at Bisley, firing a shot, having to wait for someone to put the board back and mark it, but you're never quite sure in the moment whether you're getting it right. It's always a long feedback.
Just, just touching on Bisley there for a second, John. There, Bisley for a while there, for a while, until the sport's just recently become practical 3-gun shotgun. It's just become a little bit more popular. Bisley were quite put off, but I mean, I know they held some events there very occasionally. But when I got my Section 1 shotgun, and I went up there and I was saying, like, I want to get some slug. I want to do some 50-yard steel plate. They wouldn't let me on there, but they've just opened it up this year. And it's really, really enjoyable. I mean, it can be great, but I mean, I just really enjoyed it. I went there. I went to butt zero for an hour and shot slug at 50 yards, and these little 6-inch square steel plates. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I got such a kick. I got such a kick out of it. I thought, you know what, this is completely different than laying down and trying to hit a 12-inch target from 1,000 yards. This is so much different, much more fun. Why did they open it up? And I think Bisley could do a lot more. Don't you agree?
I agree. In clay pigeon shooting, skeet shooters look at trap shooters and think they're weird, and vice versa. Everybody looks down at the sporting people who like to walk out in the woods and shoot random clays, and everybody with a shotgun looks down on a practical shooter. We're like the dirty cousin who sits in the corner and he turns up at weddings, gets drunk, and makes a fool of himself. So this has, for me at least, always been like that. Very much a rifle-centric view. They have their ranges. You're going to shoot distance with your rifle. That's what they've always done. So as that's what they've always done, that's what they'll always do. So when the dirty cousin comes along and starts having fun and making lots of noise very quickly, they just look down their nose at us and say, "Oh, that's not quite what we do, is it?"
And what are our UK organisations, John, in practical shooting? I think we have a couple of big ones, and a couple of big organisations that young people who are interested in 3-gun and practical shotgun. Who are those organisations, and how do the kids get involved?
So the two major organisations are the NRA, who tend to be more grassroots. So they drive forward club level shooting. They have a couple of big events, but predominantly they push forward the clubs. And then the UKPSA, which is the United Kingdom Practical Shooting Association. They're so they shoot a style of shooting called IPSA, International Practical Shooting Confederation. So you can go all over the world and shoot IPSA shooting under that banner. It's kind of a little bit like the Olympic ski, rather than just shooting club ski. So the easiest mode of entry would probably be to get to the UKPSA website and find a local club, see what's going on, and make your pathway through that way.
That's good information there, John. Now, look, just touching on this sport itself, I mean, as I said earlier, and there's so many different types of shooting disciplines. You can get involved with precision shooting with 2.2 prone, long range rifle. Practical shooting is probably no different in terms of what you do. What you do, again, is precision shooting. It's very much not only involved with timing, but you have to be accurate. So it's not all about shooting as quickly as possible. It's about hitting the target also, isn't it?
So the sport is scored by target score divided by time. Mm-hmm. So you can shoot as fast as you like, but if you don't hit that target, you're not going to score any points.
Okay.
So it's more about hitting the targets as quickly as you can, rather than shooting as quickly as you can to hit targets.
So the guy holding that little device on your shoulder, just explain what that is.
It's a shot timer. It's just a microphone that picks in sound, beeps to start, and then picks up every shot after that, or every loud noise after that. So when you finish shooting, he looks at that, says, okay, well, whatever your time was.
Okay.
Target score divided by that time.
Now, obviously, you've been doing this for some time. You've improved your skills. You've got to the level of ability that you have right now, and you've put a lot of time and effort into this. It all requires a lot of stress, a lot of thinking. I mean, in terms of preparing yourself, Jon, psychologically, and that there, you've thought about this. You've thought about this to the extent that you've written a book. And am I right? Am I right in thinking that was it lockdown? Was it lockdown that this sort of came about?
Lockdown was the push, I think. I've always thought that there was a market for a book that was more aimed towards the beginner, because as you know from all your experiences, when you look at something, it can be very overwhelming. So if somebody says to you, well, no, you can break that down into smaller parts, and by concentrating on those smaller parts, you can just go and have fun, then that was the book that I wish I'd read when I first started competing, because everything out there was kind of very prescriptive, very technical, how to shoot, how to reload, how to do things, but no real kind of baby steps on the way of applying yourself and the way of breaking everything down. I've always thought there was a book for that, a space for that in the market. And then when we got locked down, it was kind of, oh, okay then. A couple of things were said in the podcast, and I was like, let's go and write a book then.
And it's interesting that, because if you look at the other types of shooting, and again, just going back to the types of shooting that I got involved with, I mean, I shot pistols 25 years ago, just before the ban, and for me, it sort of lost its appeal a little bit, and then sort of got into rifle, obviously, much later. But I think in terms of developing your skills and your ability, it's, a lot of it is about focus, it's about breathing, it's about holding the sight picture in terms of long range, 2-2 prone rifle shooting, tiny little fractions of movement and what you have to do to get to the level, the skill level you want to get to. And I suppose that goes for any sport. It goes for particularly what you do. And how do you prepare yourself? I mean, when you wrote the book, were you thinking about all these things and how to develop your skills and how to approach it all mentally?
Yes, quite simply. So the way I found to approach it in my way, at least, is to break it down to the smallest part you can. So, as I said, rifle shooting, trigger pull. Okay, you can train trigger pull separately, and then once you've got an acceptable level of it, you can ignore it, because your skill level will depreciate over time, but it takes longer to depreciate than it does to gain. So you just have to touch on it now and again. So for me, leading up to any event, breaking down everything to the smallest component parts, working on those component parts, allows you then to put that all together when you go to a match. And it's the same with the mentality of it all. For most, not for most people, sorry, for some people. Some people get overwhelmed by the event. So I can't go to that event because I can't win it. Or I can't go to that event because people might think that I'm not very good. And the truth is, or the truth as I see it at least, is when you're on that stage or you're at that event, the only person who cares about your performance is you. So if you've broken down all of your equipment and all of your skills to the smallest common denominator, then when you come to the event, you only have to worry about yourself. You don't have to worry about anybody else or anything else. I see a lot of people get very confused about all of that and have really, really bad events, really bad experiences with events. And it's all psychological. They've got the skills, they've got the abilities, they've got the equipment. So what else is there?
This is what happens across the board in all sports. John, you know, when competitors get to events and build themselves up and prepare themselves, sometimes it tends to go wrong. And so when it does go wrong, I mean, what are the things to do? What are the things that you do if you go to a shooting event and it doesn't go well, and you come away and you think, do you know what? There's a lot of things that I did wrong here. How can I fix this? How do you fix those things?
The first thing is taking ownership of them. A lot of people, some people will come away from an event and say, well, that went badly because my gun blew up, or, you know, shoes fell off, or it was raining too hard. Okay, yes, they are reasons, but the moment you make them excuses, they're no longer useful. So by taking ownership of the things that happened, right, so identifying what happened and taking ownership of it, then by taking ownership of it, you've already given yourself a solution for how to rectify it. So if you were loading a gun and you dropped a magazine on the floor, practice your loading. Not complicated, it's not rocket science. The biggest problem in our sport mentally is the fact it's a little bit like golf, weirdly. It's long periods of doing nothing, and then very short periods of doing a lot very quickly. So you walk up to the tee, you play your shot, you walk 300 yards to find that you've had a bad lie. Okay, well, now you've just got to do the best you can, but you've had that time to think about it, and that can ruin your head. So getting back on the pony is the hardest trick.
That's why I gave that sport up, John, because I sliced everything off the tee. Everything went that way. If it didn't go that way, it was a duck hook. You know, so what do? You just give it up and you get a rifle and learn how to shoot, don't you? You know.
Golf course is just a bad use of good land, isn't it?
So the thing is, with precision shooting and practical shooting and three-gun shooting, you've got all these different techniques. And when I think about the techniques, and you touched on, we'll talk about techniques, you know, we're talking about the trigger. And I've seen some crazy guys out there, John. They're so fast. I'm trying to think of the American guy, the old American guy. What's his name?
Jerry Mitchell.
Jerry Mitchell, that's it. I mean, I don't know how old Jerry's, probably in his 60s, but he picks up a handgun.
Yep.
He picks up an AR-15, and it's almost like a fully automatic. It's a semi-automatic weapon, pistol, AR-15. It's coming out like a fully automatic. I mean, what is this? What's the trigger? I can't shoot that fast. Where does he get this technique from? Where do you get your technique from? How do you develop that technique?
So Jerry, obviously his age, but he's very old school. So he developed his trigger technique, the speed of it, the muscles, the pathways. He's American. He can do this kind of thing. So with the revolver, he was just driving to work, pulling the trigger as fast as he could, getting his reps in, doing his hour and a half drive to work, and just pulling the trigger, just repeatedly.
He's bloody good with a shotgun as well. I mean, I have to be honest, John. I went down to Bud Zero a few weeks ago, and I've just been browsing through some YouTube videos, you know, and I picked up a video of Jerry with a shotgun. And by the way, guys, just in case some of you out there don't know who we're talking about, I've got a little clip here. I'm just going to show you actually of this. He's not an old man, is he? But I mean, he's probably in his 60s. But this is Jerry.
Hey, go ahead and get it cranked up a little bit.
Take a little look at this.
Oh, there it is. Anyway, guys, this is the 940 JM shotgun.
I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. I mean, he's the same thing with a pistol, and he's I think he's attempted the world record, hasn't he, with an AR-15 at picking off the car.
Yeah, he set a world record for
amazing, absolutely incredible.
Drill. Yeah, he's got a couple of world records. His trigger, his technique is amazing.
So what is that? I tried it, John. I tried it. I picked up the shotgun. You know, I just took a deep breath. I couldn't get the trigger off as quick as that. Does it take a bit of time? Does it take a process of thinking, or?
It takes a bit of time. Not conscious thinking as such. But the biggest thing with a shotgun is the recoil. So you can pull the trigger that fast, but can you control the gun? That's the issue. With enough shells, with enough ammo, you know, it wouldn't take you long to start shooting the gun. Maybe not as quickly, Jerry, but not far off. Whether you can control that gun or not, that gets very complicated.
So in the book,
it's one of the hardest parts. Well, with the shotgun, at least, it's one of the hardest. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I think a lot of fairly new practical shooters probably don't hold a shotgun correctly, or they don't hold it comfortably enough in order to get accuracy. Maybe perhaps, especially with slug.
Anybody can get accuracy, so anyone can fire that first shot well. Line up, you know, all time in the world, line up the shot, have a good trigger break. What happens after that? That's where it becomes complicated. And like I say, beginners are going to struggle with their technique, and a lot of that comes down to how they hold the gun.
Is technique, is that something that you emphasize on in the book, as well as all the
not too much? There's a bit. Yeah, not too much. There's a little bit, but technique is things that people fall into, and they find their way. That was the problem I found with a lot of the kind of existing books. Was this is how you do it. This is how you must do it. Any other way is wrong.
By the way, I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to read. I always like to read the book after the film. I do. I don't know why that is. I think it's always better to read the book after the film. You ever seen the movie The Godfather? I read the book after the film, and the film was better than the book, but the book was really good, you know? So this is why we're watching the film here, and then we're going to read the book. So I'm kind of hoping by the time I read your book, okay, yep. I'm going to be going up to Bisley with my 308, with the scope, and the other 6.5 with the iron sights and the sling, and I get down to Bud Zero. And I want to think, and I want to know right here, I want to know what I'm going to get. What am I going to get? What are you going to give me? What are you going to give me from the book? What am I going to get from this book?
Concentrate on your process, not your result.
Okay. I've never been very good at that, John. I've never been very good at discipline.
So that's where the thing is, the result is the result, isn't it? But the result can only come about by following a process. So the key to a good result is a good process. So if you concentrate on your process, you don't get a good result, you get the result you deserve. So concentrate on your process. That's it.
And you strike me as the type of character, John, that actually thinks about these things all the time. You know, I mean, are you thinking about these things continuously when you're perfecting your game, when you're trying to improve or be a little bit more accurate or being as fast as you can be? Are you thinking about these things all the time?
No, I think about the thing I'm doing when I'm doing it. So if I'm trying to be faster, I will be thinking about being faster. I'm trying to be more accurate, I'll be focusing on accuracy. The ment is, again, any trained chimp can get the skills of pulling a trigger. Every trained chimp can run around. We've been doing it since we were children. Putting the two together, fine. We learn to drive. We We've learned to do very complex things. So why do we continually get it wrong? So if we have the skills to do it right, why do we continue to get it wrong? So the only thing can be mental. And you can elect to think about the mental stuff whenever you like. And I spend a remarkable amount of time thinking about the psychology and the application of that psychology. Not necessarily correctly, granted, but it's my way of, you got to find your own way.
So perhaps some of us are going the wrong way about it. Some of us are going the wrong way around about finding where we're going wrong and what we should really focus on. To that extent, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I've only come to this conclusion because I did it that way. I was results focused for a long time. And winning my first match was amazing. It was brilliant. And then at my next match, I got absolutely spanked because I thought I'd won the match because I was fast. So the next match I was fast. And I wasn't accurate. And you can go down the whole rabbit hole of should I be fast, should I be accurate? But there is a happy middle ground that everybody will settle on. But the main thing is the mentality of it. And once you learn to accept your ability, you learn to accept the result will be what it will be. The only thing you can control is yourself. Then when you get to the match, you can just apply your processes correctly. And most people, I talk to a lot of people about this stuff.
But what would you say your weak areas are in shooting? What areas would you like to improve yourself? I mean, we all improve all of the time.
So my weakest discipline is pistol. My weakest discipline is pistol. So I need to focus more on that. It's a skill that diminishes quicker than the shotgun and the rifle. So from a physical perspective, or from a platform perspective, I should say, pistol. From a physical perspective, I'm not explosive enough and I'm not bendy. So if I'm doing a multi-day match, like day 2, I'm in bits. So I need to stretch and do all those things that we don't like to do. But honestly, my biggest gains are going to come from psychologically applying my processes. Being better psychologically will give me a better physical result.
So all this, what we're talking about here, John, is not necessarily it's to do with what's going on up here. It's not really to do with buying a very, very expensive weapon, is it? Because it's people can spend thousands of pounds out there on weapons. Doesn't mean to say they're going to get the job done, does it?
Yeah.
I mean, can you go out and pick up in terms of 2.2, if you could pick up a 1522 for 500 quid, is the £2,000 version going to be any better?
Is it going to be £1,500 better? No.
Yeah.
Any good equipment will benefit beginners by hiding or allowing them to apply poor technique, or at least technique is not good. It will hide a lot of the issues. Whereas when you're at the other end of the spectrum and you're a subject matter expert, then you might pick up a fraction of a second, or quarter MOA, half MOA, probably not even half MOA, quarter MOA more accurate, which, given a 12-inch plate at 1,000 yards, quarter MOA is really, really important. But when you're shooting a 450 millimeter target at 20 yards, the MOA on that is huge. You don't have to worry about it. So no, practical shooting, more than a lot of the other sports, is very much about the Indian rather than the bow.
Definitely relate to that. Definitely, 100%. And so, just for the guys out there who are unfamiliar with three gun and practical shooting, which I believe is an up and coming sport, is it what other things in the book, John? Apart from obviously the psychological side of things, is there anything else in the book there to offer?
Yeah, so there are quite a lot of tools in there for how to prepare yourself for a match. A little bit of the kind of practical skills required, but there's so many other people out there writing it better than I can. Better off buying their books than mine. But none of those books will tell you, how to square your stuff away and how to ensure that all your stuff is ready to go, and also accepting that is the case. A lot of people kind of get very twisted by not accepting their current situation. So, is their gun correct? How many times can you zero a gun? Get it zeroed and put it back in the bag. It's done. You have to do all your testing. With three guns, you've got three different platforms, and one of those platforms shoots three different types of ammunition. So you've got 5 different types of ammunition that you need to select the best for you, for your abilities, for your techniques, for your gun, and all the rest of it. There's some tips and strategies on how to make sure you're equipped and ready to rock.
But do you not need a little bit of luck too, John? I mean, what are the gun jams? What do you get a misfire? What do you get about, I mean, this is bound to happen, isn't it? It must, surely.
It does happen. It does happen. And arguably, there was a golfer one there who said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. But you can't. The problem with a round is you only know it's good when it goes bang. Until that moment, it's a little bit like Schrodinger's cat. It's either going to go bang or it's not. So then, if it doesn't go bang, how well can you deal with that situation? Or if you go flat on your face in the wet Welsh hillsides, which I might have, how well can you bounce up and get back on it? So a lot of the best shooters, it is about how good they are, but it is also about how well do they deal with adversity. And that comes down to practice and the ability to use your equipment.
Also being fit as well, John. I mean, you are quite fit,
Jerry beats me.
Well, that's...
And if you look out there are some guys who, if you look at the British shooting scene, a lot of the top shooters are not racing snakes. They're not. It's not. There are a few in America. There are a couple in the UK, but the vast majority are older, wider, lumpier, and it helps to be fitter, but it helps more in recovery than anything else. You don't need to be fit to shoot a gun. You need to be able to get in practical shooting. You need to get from position to position, and that's where the fitness comes in. And if you can shoot on the move, you don't need to be. You can't run and shoot on the move. Or at least you can't run fast and shoot on the move accurately. So then you can mitigate a lot of the speed required by taking up that time shooting.
And can you do you have facilities to go to here in the UK where you can practice and spend enough time to prepare yourself? Are there enough facilities for you here in the UK to go about your thing?
Unfortunately, the dojo closed down. That closed a year ago, I think. So we lost that facility. I was down there every week for training, and then at least once a month for competition, and probably some other stuff in there as well. So since that's gone, been a little bit lost at sea. There's a club that's local to me up in Shepton Mallet where I can practice with 2-2. They do shotgun now and again. I've got big hopes for a range in South Wales. It's not too far from me. So if that comes off, then that'll probably be my new home.
So in terms of the pistol replacement, do you find that you can practice with airsoft? Does that give you what you need?
So in my garage, I've got my dry fire wall, which is just a bunch of targets stapled to a piece of carpet that's screwed to the garage door. And I've got my airsoft pistol. So one of my office is also out there. So while I'm waiting for an email to download, I pick up the gun, end up shooting the targets at the other end of the garage. The manipulations of actually reloading the gun, yes, they're exactly the same. So yeah, I mean, all the America is where we compare ourselves to, and all the American pistol shooters, all American shooters say dry fire has to be done. You have to dry fire to be able to learn your techniques. Brilliant. So what's airsoft? Airsoft is choose it to be dry fire. If you choose to load the gun with magazines and gas and little BBs, then it's not dry fire, it's live fire. And then do that to I'll just sweep them all up again. Yeah.
Well, yes. Reloading the Section 1 shotgun can acquire quite a skill too. I mean, I just about got the hang of quad loading, but it's done with not as much speed as I would like to, but I'm getting it right. But I think the speed comes with technique and things, and of course that can be done. That can be done with blank shells, and to that extent, I mean, I was doing it on Bud Zero there a couple of weeks ago, and these guys were looking at me. I was the only one on there, but it is a very difficult. It does take a bit of time. It is technique, but it's very, very important for you to keep the rounds up that magazine on that shotgun.
Absolutely.
Is that? Yeah. No, it is all the time. Obviously, they restrict whatever else we can do. How often do you actually get out of the United States? I mean, obviously, at the moment, it's a bit difficult with COVID, but under normal circumstances, if you didn't have a pandemic, how often would you be traveling abroad shooting?
I'd be looking to go twice a year as a minimum. A lot of that depends on money. I'm not the richest man in the world, so I have to be careful with these things. So I would try and go kind of March, April, and maybe October, November. Getting done at the beginning and end of the year gives you something to look forward to in between Christmas and birthday.
Yeah, difficult time really for any of us to do anything. Fortunately, shooting was one of the first sporting facilities that was allowed to open because it's outdoors and because it was obviously safe to distance to that extent. Do you think, John, what do you think we can do here in the UK to promote practical shooting and events like 3-gun? Because I can see the Home Office and the government taking a bleak view of that, in terms of, do we want to facilitate, areas in the country where they can develop practical shotgun, stages, courses, events, grounds to get. I mean, I know there are some in the country and they're getting licensed, but I can just see it becoming difficult. What's your view on that?
The problem with shooting is it's a minority sport, and in this country, it is a privilege to own the guns. It's not a right, it's a privilege. We are given that privilege by the government. So unfortunately, they can make some nice big headlines by closing everything down. Do I think it's right? No, of course it's not. That's why. So this shirt is a bright colour for a very simple reason, and that is, I want people to understand that it's a sport. I don't run around in camo. I don't run around in black. Well, there's a bit of black on it. It's a bright shirt. It's a bright shirt because it's a sport. Using the tools to overcome the problem. Is it training for war? No. It's a sport. But we would be an easy target. So how do we make it bigger and better? Quite simply by doing what you're doing, which is talking about it, promoting it in the correct manner, and getting people involved, and actually getting people out there and doing it. Because we can all go on YouTube and watch these videos. They look amazing, and then we can say, well, I can't do that. No, you can't do that to the level that you're watching, in exactly the same ways I can't play football like Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, anyone, actually. When I watch a football game, I'm not a professional footballer. I wouldn't dream of thinking that I could play to that level. I can play the game, I can't play to that level. Watch your videos on YouTube. We can all do it. We can't do it to that level. So getting involved and basically stop making people making excuses for not going because, well, it's going to be too hard, it's going to be too difficult. Learning to drive was hard and difficult, but we did that as well.
I think the reality is that, you know, the gun owners, the responsible target shooting gun owners in the UK are not really responsible for very, very much that goes on in terms of crime. I don't see it. I don't think anybody would tolerate, not even me. I mean, when I go to a shooting ground with a big gun, and I'm watching all around me. I'm watching the guys to my right, the guys to my left, and you know, if I see someone pointing the gun the wrong way, I'm going to be the first. I'm going to be one of the first people that goes over there straight away, John, and tells them off. So, because most of us are safe, and especially in your environment and 3-gun. I mean, the range officers are watching you, holding the guns down, keeping them safe, not pointing the guns in different or dangerous, precarious, you know, directions where you could harm people. And I think most of the police organisations all around the counties of the UK actually know this. They know that responsible gun owners are aware of this, and I don't think we get enough support for that. I don't think we do. I mean, like, we're just people, but we're interested in targets. And I think at the times when, you know, I've been watched down at Bisley, you know, shooting stickle down, reload with reloaded ammunition to see how close I can get in a, you know, in firstly a 0 visibility day or a very wet day. It's just part of the challenge. It's just, can I hit that little target? Can I hit that little target from just over half a mile? And that's the reason why I'm here. That's the purpose why I'm here. You know, and you're participating in your events to do the best that you can do in a short period of time, very accurately, and that's the discipline. I think most of the police forces understand that. Do you not think so?
I think the police forces do. I think the politicians don't care, and the police are there to do the job of upholding what the politicians say. So, you know, you can't blame the police. In most cases, there is obviously the occasional person who goes against guidance or whatever, but they're just doing their job, and their job is dictated by the politicians.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, no, absolutely fair. I mean, I remember when I got my license, you know, the guy, I put down all these things that I wanted, you know, and he said, well, what shooting have you done? I said, well, about 25 years ago. He went, what? He said, well, what do you want? You want a couple of 2.2 rifles? You want a 308? You want a 223? And you want a shotgun? He says, you're not going to get any of these. He says, just put down the 222s. You've got to be a member of 2 clubs, That's fine. Your police checks come through all right. He says, and then put in a variation. You've got to join the NRA. You won't get any of these weapons. And he was very open. He was very friendly. You know, he and gave me very good advice. I didn't find any problems with it. I can appreciate that some police authorities in different counties are a little bit slower, a little bit tougher than others because of maybe perhaps crime to that extent, especially with Section 1 shotguns.
No, I don't think
What do
it's
you
crime.
think?
I think it's I don't think it's crime related. I think it's it's I think it's people. So the politicians write the book guidelines, and then people interpret them. And so somebody who's a bit of a trying to make a name for themselves may well interpret things in a different way than because they've got the power, then they've got the ability to say yes or no. So then it becomes about ego and things like that, as opposed to just this is the law, that's the way we're going to do it. As soon as you put interpretation into it, then you start getting people having opinions.
I'm thinking maybe, you know, the more I think about this, the more I think, do we not need an organization to sort of intermediate? Do we not need an organization to perhaps maybe liaise between us as gun owners and the police, maybe work with the police and the processing of a firearm certificate, the processing of someone applying for a weapon or a variation, or people participating in a sport, and that would promote the sport. But we don't seem to have anything like that. You know, we just seem to have.
We don't have anybody visible, or at least we don't have a lot of stuff visible. BASC, right? You're wrongly, they're very involved in it. UKPSA, the Clay Pigeon Shooting Association, they're very involved in it. The NRA are to a degree, I don't know how much. So yes, they are. There is like the liaison group that talk to the politicians. They and they do their best, I think. But at the end of the day, they are responsible to their members, as opposed to being responsible to firearms owners as a whole. The BASC don't give a shit about target shooting. They're worried about deer hunting. Clay pigeon people don't give a shit about deer hunting. They're out shooting clay. So, unfortunately, they're all a little bit self-serving.
I think the NRA are showing some consideration. I mean, I spoke to Andrew Mercer earlier this year, just before lockdown, and he told me that he's very much in favour of target shotgun and everything that it represents at Bisley. And he is actually in favour of promoting practical shotgun on the grounds. But, you know, he did explain to me at the time it was very difficult with the area that was surrounding Bisley to have a practical shotgun area or 3-gun. You know, it's very, very difficult legal process for the NRA to get involved in, because as much as they have had events in the past, there is a legal procedure that they have to follow, and they have to be very, very careful as how they portray it and sell it as a business. But I do genuinely think it is there, and it will develop itself into a major sport, you know. And you know, this is why we're here, you know, John. This is why people like yourself participate and promote the sport. The shooting is, for me, a dying sport. It is a dying sport, and it's probably more to do with our gun laws and politics, probably, and the difficulty in getting involved in the sport. And also, yes, like you touched on earlier, the expense of it. But I think it's a wonderful sport, and I think it's a wonderful sport for all the young guys out there to get involved in. Go down to your 2-2 clubs. You can get involved with the organisations that John mentioned. There's a UKPSA. You know, I'm sure they've got a website. John, have they got a website for information?
Yep, Google UKPSA. Be the first thing that pops up.
John, we're going to wind down very shortly, but we're just going to touch on the book again. Okay. Let's talk about the availability of this book. Is this book available on Amazon, and what else? Where else can we get hold of this book?
So the easiest thing is Amazon, paperback and Kindle. Magload also sell them. So if you go to Magload for any of your stuff, they've got a bunch of them there. I would have been selling them at matches, obviously, but we haven't had any. So yeah, so Amazon is the easiest solution at the moment.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm going to be getting hold of this book. I'm going to be reading it. And I'm expecting this book to turn my life around completely. You know, I don't hang about. It'll take me probably about 2 days to read it, just to get rid of the house. You know, I'll go to bed, I'll read it for about 2 hours. You know, I don't know how many pages you've got in there.
Only a couple of hundred.
I hope it's got big print as well, John. I've got to wear these glasses here every time I read, you know. It's terrible. You know, I'm getting older. I can't find I'm trying to find the sight picture now, John. Really struggling. What's the difference?
That's the great thing about telescopic sights. What's the difference between what, sir?
John, it's been an insight. Thanks very much for joining us. The first video is here on the place, you know. So, you know, guys, you know how to get hold of John's book. And if any of you are interested in practical shooting, just drop me a line and I'll feed you some of the links that John's talked about if you want to get involved in it. As I say, look, listen, we're all responsible shooters out there. There's every reason why new shooters and young people should get involved in practical shooting. And I think, what better way to start than to get this book, get hold of the book, read the book, try and achieve even a third of what John's achieving with a gun. You probably won't, because he's bloody quick. He's found out what he's best at, you know. All he does is upset his friends and his wife. The only thing he's good at is shooting. That's all he can do. Anyway, guys, we're wrapping it up. Thanks very much for joining us. And hopefully in the coming weeks, we'll get some of John's colleagues on here. We're going to have a long-range shooter coming on in a few weeks, and we're going to try and get some of the others to come on. So thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up with you soon. Hang on there, John. I'll have a little chat with you just before you go. Bye-bye, guys.